Hafa day and welcome. As many of you know, I'm Kimberly Keeling from Humanities Guåhan. We are very excited to bring you this morning's webinar, Words and Reflections from the Commission on Decolonization, with Executive Director Melvin Pat-Borja in conversation with Selena Onadera Salas, a legislative policy analyst and community advocate. We also have a special address by Megahaga Leon Guerrero, the chairperson of the Commission on Decolonization. So thank you for joining us. This webinar is the second in a 5-part series for the project Unincorporated, Voting, Voices, and Visions para Guahan, which will also include a digital magazine to launch this April. Unincorporated explores CHamoru stories, experiences, and voices in relation to voting rights, democracy, decolonization, and self-determination. Humanities Guåhan received a grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation in partnership with the Federation of State Humanities Councils to produce this project as part of a nationwide initiative, Why It Matters, Civic and Electoral Participation. We see ourselves as the convener, connector, and catalyst for the project as we explore why civic engagement matters through an examination of the political history of Guahan and the histories, experiences, and diverse perspectives of the island's indigenous people. Humanities Guåhan is humbled and honored by the opportunity to bring this important project to our island community. I want to thank Melvin and Natasha Suba, the program coordinator at the Commission on Decolonization, for this special program partnership. Natasha worked closely and enthusiastically with Nicole joining us from Humanities Guåhan to plan and prepare for this webinar. It is now my great pleasure to introduce E. Megahagan Guahan, Leon Guerrero. We can't hear you, Governor. You're muted.
Sorry for the technical difficulties here. Anyway, I just wanted to say half a day Todu Samju, and I'm just so grateful, Kim, for the Humanities Council's partnership and with other people for hosting this, I think, very important webinar series and furthering the discussion on civic engagement in relation to national voting rights, democracy, decolonization, self-determination, and Guam's political status. For over 500 years after Guam's first contact with foreigners, our path has been driven by colonization. And today, our people, our culture, and even our history continue to be shaped by the words and actions of world powers. However, we must remember that Guam has never stood idly by. In 1949, the Guam Congress walked out of session to protest their lack of power after efforts to subpoena an American civilian regarding a violation of a prohibition against Americans owning local businesses was thwarted by Naval Governor Charles Allen Palmer. Frustrated and angered by the lack of respect, they refused to return, and Governor Palmer dismissed them from their positions. This brave act of civil disobedience brought widespread national attention to the long-standing political struggle of our people. Guam leaders, among them Antonio B. Wampat and Francisco B. Leon Guerrero, stood before Congress and sitting presidents to demand that the people of Guam be treated fairly and equally. Through their efforts, the Guam Organic Act of 1950 was passed, granting U.S. citizenship to our people and establishing our status as an unincorporated territory. Despite this monumental shift in recognition for our people, we must remember that the Organic Act was passed and implemented without the express will and consent of our people, leaving our core issues of political status and self-determination issues unresolved. While the Organic Act bestowed some measures of self-governance to Guam, it would take another 20 years for us to elect our own governor. And in 1972, we were able to elect a delegate to the House of Representatives, one with no voting privileges and a very limited voice. We must acknowledge that our present political status does not meet our needs. As an unincorporated territory, we are limited in our ability to negotiate meaningful partnerships with our regional neighbors, and we lack the full authority to dictate how our land, our skies, and our waters are to be used. And though national voting rights would increase Guam's level of autonomy and self-government and would allow us to vote for president, it still does not address the fundamental denial of our right to self-determination. As discussions increase regarding Guam's ability to vote in national elections, we must acknowledge that this is not a substitute for decolonization or for self-determination, a very fundamental basic human right that has been denied to us for too long. The Biden-Harris administration has acknowledged that now is the time for the United States to rectify the social injustices of the past, whose effects continue to shape our present and guide our future. And now is the time to act. My administration has not been silent in our intent to press forward in Guam's quest for decolonization. Today, I reaffirm this commitment. We ourselves alone must control the will of our destiny. Once again, thank you, Kim, to the Humanities Guåhan for organizing this event. And I am excited for the conversations and discussions that will come about, and I'm sure it's going to be very interesting. Suzuusmasi.
Suzuusmasi, Governor, thank you so much for being here and for giving such an important address. Thank you. So I'm going to introduce Selena once again, as I did 3 weeks ago. I have been privileged to know Selena for the past 15 years. Selena served on the Humanities Guåhan board. She is our current Grant Review Committee chairwoman. She's a colleague as well as a friend. Selena, as I initially mentioned, is a legislative policy analyst and community advocate, currently working in the office of Senator Clint Rigel. She's actively involved in community nonprofit organizations that seek to protect, perpetuate, and promote the preservation of Chamorro cultural values. Selena earned a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Texas at San Antonio and immediately returned home to continue her career in public service. Selena also chaired the Literary Arts Committee for the 2016 Festival of Pacific Arts held in Guahan. Thank you so much again, Selena, for your partnership in presenting Unincorporated.
Suzuos Maase Kim, thank you very much for that introduction. It is now, I do want to thank everyone for their participation today. And before we continue our conversation, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules with our participants. And not rules, but just some guidance as to how we're going to facilitate. And so Melvin will be giving us his presentation, which we've broken down into, I think, three segments. And between each segment, I will be posing or fielding questions from our participants. And this includes our participants on the Facebook feed. Our Humanities Guåhan team will be submitting your questions for you to me. And I'm hoping that we can have enough time to address everyone's questions and for Melvin to answer. So without further ado, just to explain the Commission on Decolonization mission. The Commission on Decolonization was established by the 24th Guam Legislature in 1997 to enhance the efforts of the Commission on Self-Determination. Its purpose is to educate the people of Guam on the various political status options available. Since then, the Commission and each respective task force have conducted educational and outreach programs, including meetings, rallies, and seminars in efforts to inform the public about the decolonization process and three status options: free association, independence, and statehood. It is now my privilege to introduce my dear friend, Melvin Pat-Borja. He is the Executive Director of the Commission on Decolonization, the President of the Department of CHamoru Affairs, and Acting Director of the Guam Public Library System. Prior to his appointment, he served as an educator in the public school system for over a decade, most recently with Southern High School. Melvin holds a BEd in secondary education and a master's in Pacific Island Studies from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Melvin, thank you very much for sharing this space and taking the time to have this conversation with us today. It is my honor and privilege. Hutunahau de Pagu I Tarehamu. Sizuos Maase.
Sizuos Maase. Hafide Toda Samzu, Hafide Magahaga, Kim, and the staff and crew at Humanities Guåhan, and all of you joining us online. Thank you for being here to extend this conversation. We're going to start. I need to first thank Magahaga for framing this conversation, the context of this conversation with some really important milestones in our history. A lot of which led to where we are now. I would like to speak a little bit about how we got here and what, not so much, there was a lot of this conversation really was had last webinar with Dr. Underwood, and a lot of that history was laid out very thoroughly. But I did want to highlight the Commonwealth Era. So the Commonwealth Era was, and this is a very critical part too, because it's relevant in our community conversations. A lot of people still wonder whatever happened to Commonwealth, or why isn't Commonwealth going to be on a ballot? And the short answer really is that it is. Free association really would be a Commonwealth option. But I think more importantly, we are here because of what transpired during the Commonwealth push. I'm sorry, is the presentation up, or is this me? Am I supposed to be sharing the presentation? It's on my side, yes? Okay, stand by. Is my share screen enabled? Hey, technology. Okay. I'm sorry, technical difficulties. This is the problem with the Zoom. I'm just going to use this, it's clear enough. Okay, so we moved from the Commonwealth period, which basically ended with us, our legislation dying in committee. And I think that the lesson that we learned in that negotiation, if you want to call it that, was that we would always hit our heads up on a glass ceiling, so long as we are within an oppressive set of parameters. And we realized that though it seemed that we would have support for our decolonization or for our self-determination, that there were always going to be limits. And during that process is also a part of, as we spoke in the last webinar, Dr. Underwood talked about the OPIR effort. During that time, this was really the beginning of our engagement with the UN. And as Dr. Underwood stated, this was all new to them at that time. They had never heard of the UN. They'd never heard of these committees on decolonization and these concepts and charters and resolutions. And so it really opened up a new avenue. And there still remains criticism locally. You know, what does the UN have to do with any of this? Like, why are we dealing with the UN? This is a decision for Congress to make or for the president to make. This is, or as the United States federal government says, this is a domestic issue. However, we have recognized that dealing solely through domestic policy and federal negotiations, we would always hit our head on the ceiling. We would never really break through. And we saw that with the Commonwealth Draft Act ending in committee. I mean, it never even hit the floor. It was never even voted on. And so during that time, during that negotiation, one of the major stumbling blocks was the federalized control over immigration and mutual consent. And so Guam wanted control of our immigration. The federal government did not want to negotiate that point. They wanted control of it. We wanted mutual consent. Mutual consent over affairs dealing with how the military would operate on Guam, what they could and couldn't do. And that was really the big piece, right? If you remember in Dr. Underwood's conversation, the sentiment at that time was that US citizenship would stop the unfair and arbitrary treatment of our people, especially regarding land. And so we understood that even on a governmental level, there had to be an address of this inequity of our relationship. And what we found is that that was not going to happen. You know, Governor Addo became famous, or maybe I guess infamous in some circles, for saying that he would not negotiate on mutual consent, that it was not within his authority to do so because it was decided on by the people through a plebiscite. And then he turned around and said that without mutual consent, my people can never truly be empowered, which I think was a really bold statement, you know, to not negotiate on these terms, that was really, you know, that was at the core of what we were after. And so after that, all of that transpired, Senator Hope Alvarez Cristobal authored PL 23147, which dissolved the Commission on Self-Determination and created the Commission on Decolonization. Now you'll notice that even the language shifts, right? So we go from self-determination into decolonization, recognizing that decolonization is consistent with the language of the UN, the language of the international community. And even in this law, you'll notice these parallel words running that reflect each other. And so even in the question of why these statuses, why these choices, why these three options, the simple answer is that these are the three internationally recognized options for political status that would relieve a non-self-governing territory from colonial rule. And so it's very clear and very simple, and it doesn't come from nowhere. This is a process, an old process that a lot of countries have gone through. You know, being mindful that Guam is one of the last 17 non-self-governing territories of the world. Okay, I think that we're at this is a section break here. So do we want to do questions? Is that how this works? We break and do questions? It's like 5 or 6 minute sections. Is that how we were doing it?
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that was the format.
It's okay. That's okay. I think while we're waiting for, while we're accepting questions too, I actually had a question myself. I wanted to hear what you think about, or is it possible to achieve, maybe this might be jumping ahead, but voting rights without changing our status?
Is it possible to achieve national voting rights without changing our status? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I think, and I guess it is kind of jumping ahead, but yeah. Why not? Let's do it.
Well, we can hold on to that, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there.
We don't have to go into the meat of it, but I would say yes, absolutely, because national voting rights would be seen as a political status improvement, right? And that's really, I think that's a thing that we have to recognize, is that political status improvements are great. You know, I don't think that anybody objects to improving a status, but there's a difference between improving the status and resolving the issue of self-determination, the denial of self-determination. That's quo. The short answer. Right, status quo. And to keep in mind that we've also gone down that path, right? That at one point there was a plebiscite where we chose there was an option that was status quo with improvements, which is really funny too, because they didn't say what the improvements would be, right? It's just status quo with improvements. They can independence, statehood, status quo with improvements. And most of us interpret improvements as we're gonna get more money. Or maybe they're gonna make our non-voting delegate vote. Or maybe they're gonna give us another non-voting delegate, but in the Senate. Or maybe, I mean, the list goes on, right? We can kind of do this all day. But none of these things, all of these things together. Maybe it's electoral college votes. Oh, that's a nice one. That's a good hot button one, right? That looks really nice on the media. In national media, in international media, that looks fantastic. Electoral college votes. Now they can vote for president. We're gonna cross that one off the list of things that Chamorros can complain about. But it doesn't resolve the core issue. We can, even if we have an opportunity, what if we put a person from Guam gets elected as president, right? Some miracle, we run the table on the electoral college vote. This still doesn't change the core issue.
Yeah. But it's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to consider. A lot of opportunities out there, but status quo. So I just have, we did get a question come in from Mr. Robert Cruz. He's asking, has Guam tried to collaborate with the other non-self-governing territories, perhaps to educate each other on their options?
I'm sorry, can
you? So he's asking, has Guam tried to collaborate with the other non-self-governing territories?
On deciding the options, or on an option together?
It sounds more, Mr. Cruz wants to know perhaps to educate each other on their options. Maybe just in general too, Mel.
What have we done? We do communicate with our neighbors in the CNMI about political status. But I think that the reality is that unfortunately for us, we are one people. We're an island chain like Hawaii, right? I mean, we're a chain of islands with the same culture, ethnicity. You know, we were together, but politically now, through our own choosing, politically we are divided. You know, and the reality is that, you know, war came between us, and, you know, political power came between us, and the CNMI went one way and we went another. And so it's, you know, in that way now, we each have our own political challenges in terms of status that we need to resolve. And then we need to have, or even concurrently, we need to have other conversations about reunification, whether we want that and what that means. You know, now is actually a really, I think, a very important time to start to revisit these conversations and really, you know, push more energy and enthusiasm into them, because the CNMI is, you know, everybody in our region wants to renegotiate their compact. You know, I think that it's clear. I think our neighbors have, you know, clearly seen that their compacts, as much as they have changed things, that they understand now that there is a better way, that they can have a more equitable relationship. You know, and I think that that's something that's important for us as well, because, you know, we went down the Commonwealth path because we saw our neighbors in the CNMI making waves and doing, you know, great things, getting these high level negotiations and a lot of this attention from the federal government. And we thought, wow, why can't we have the same? And so, you know, and because they had attained that, you know, they executed their compact, they were able to achieve their political status. You know, we thought that why not? Why can't we do the same? But I think now we also, as much as we would have liked that to have been resolved back then, you know, I guess the silver lining is that we see now how Commonwealth worked out. You know, so a lot of people out there that we can still do that, right? Commonwealth is not dead. Like, if we really wanted to, we can, you know, go back in there. Congress still allowing us to write Constitution. You know, we can start doing all of these things to prepare for Commonwealth. And yeah, sure, why not? You could, but I think it's clear that, you know, these things are very out of place, you know, and we've, you know, our people have been very intelligent and very strategic along the way. We have interjected and fought and resisted at very appropriate places, you know, in ways that weren't always seen in a positive light. You know, there are a lot of people at that time who thought that OPIR were disruptors, you know. My grandfather may have been one of those people who thought that, you know. My grandfather was very much an advocate for statehood, and very much an advocate for a closer relationship to, you know, with the federal government. And I think that was, I mean, you know, I think that we've all learned things along the way. We've experienced things along the way that have really shaped how we approach this discussion and how we approach this issue. And and I'm personally very proud of our government. You know, learning our history, it's been one of the nice things about taking up this gig, is that I thought that I understood this. I thought that I was educated. And every day I learn more and more and more. Somebody just dropped a document on my desk from former Senator Jim Underwood that has a bunch of mapped out milestones throughout our history. And it's such a great read for me. You know, it's such a nice thing to see all of this strategic approach throughout our history, and to see how intelligent, how forward thinking our people have been along the way. And yeah, we've taken a long time to resolve it. We're still, who knows if the end is in sight. But what I appreciate is the way that we continue to evolve, because this is so complex, and no non-self-governing territory is the same, no colony is the same, no colonizer is the same. Well, maybe the colonizers.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Hey, I got another question though. I've got a question that came in from Dr. Lisa Linda Natividad. She wanted to know if are there any formal bilateral efforts between Guahan and the CNMI to discuss the possibility of reunification that you know of?
I'm sorry, you was cutting out. Can you say one more time?
Are there any formal bilateral efforts between Guam?
Oh, formal bilateral efforts between us and the CNMI? Not currently, but I think that it's, like I said, I think this is a great opportunity for this type of discussion, this type of motion. I don't, we have a lot of, nothing very formal, I would say, but we have a lot of connections still to our neighbors. And that's one of the things that I think is very encouraging, is that even in small ways that may seem insignificant, like we have an agricultural trade going on right now between our islands, which seems small, but at the core of it, this is what makes us us. This now is reaching back into our ancestral roots, our way. We're feeding each other. This is a very important step, in my opinion, in reestablishing this connection, this love between us, because let's face it, there's a lot of hurt between us. It still exists. Even our kids who are long separated from it, they still feel that animosity from their parents, grandparents. They understand that it's real. And so we have to be deliberate about the healing. And I think that that's the important thing, is that we are, even though there are no very, formal bilateral agreements between our governments. I think that we have agreed to ally politically, but these small connections that we have been deliberately making throughout the years, I think is what is important and what will get us to that place.
We have the conversations going, so I think that's important. Thanks, Melvin. We'll go ahead and allow you to move on to your next segment of the presentation. And we do have a couple of questions that I think will apply to the next parts of your question or of your presentation, though. So I'll get to those questions as soon as we do. Go ahead.
Okay. So as much as the Commission on Decolonization legislation really was, a very thoughtful process, very much a product of our action and reflection. Nonetheless, we will always run into resistance. We will always run into an obstacle. The Davis versus Guam case is probably the biggest, most popularized obstacle, most formidable obstacle in recent time. So Dave Davis is a retired airman. He is, I'm not sure where Dave Davis is from somewhere in the continental US. Moved to Guam, resided in Guam for a number of years, was denied access to the registry, the political status registry, for the plebiscite, for our self-determination plebiscite. He asserted that his 14th and 15th amendments were violated, and that this was basically that we were discriminating against him based on race and ethnicity. And so he took us to court. We lost on the we went up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. At that point, we were ruled against, but it's not as plain and simple, I think, as a judge says these guys are right versus these guys. What I think we learned from the court ruling was that, well, first of all, I should say what we learned is that Julian Uggen is a monster in the courtroom, and he was a very formidable opponent. Julian Uggen did right by us, and he fought valiantly. The attorney or the judge actually was very, very clear in her ruling, in her briefing, that the arguments that Julian presented were actually very substantial. But it was so close It was so close that it was difficult, you know, traditionally, if you look at the history of the way that these judges rule, when it's that close on a constitutional rights issue, they will always kind of err on the side of caution, so to speak. Which is ironic when, you know, in terms of constitutional rights, that when it's that close to err on the side of caution, when we have the territorial clause that blatantly decides, you know, which rights apply to citizens of Guam and which ones don't. So what we saw is that we were not far off. Like, yeah, we lost in the case, but we were not very far off. And it were really minor things in our law that swayed the judge, that kind of kept her hands tied and made it difficult for her to rule on our side. And a lot of it was that, you know, on one side, Julian argued that this is a non-binding plebiscite. And so, you know, what's the deal? It's really, you know, this is really for us to determine what we want. You know, it's not about anyone else. And it's clear who the colonized people are here. It's clear that decolonization is to address the colonized people. It's clear that self-determination is an act that you make once. It's an exercise that you do once. You know, and so for us, right, and this is kind of the way that I look at it is, let's say that I move to California and I decide that I want to vote for president, right? I want to be a real American. So I'm going to register in California, and now I get to vote for my rep. You know, I'm represented. I'm a part of a representative democracy now on a full level, right? Full scale. Got my representation in the Senate, in Congress. I got my electoral college votes. I have then just self-determined as an individual. I made that choice for myself. I've resolved my political issue because now I've availed myself of full voting rights, right? In our law, I am now ineligible to vote in the Guam plebiscite, right? And it's not just because, and that was put in there deliberately, right? That we have to be a registered voter on Guam. So, but if I move to California and I live in California, but I still vote in Guam, I'm still a resident of Guam, vote absentee, you know, then I'm still considered a part of it, right? Now, in the same way, right, Dave Davis, for example, since he wanted to be the example, by moving to Guam, yes, he is equally locked out of the American system in the same way that we are. However, Dave Davis made a choice he gave up his rights when he moved out of Minnesota or wherever he moved out of. You know, when he left there and became a citizen of Guam, registered to vote in Guam, became a part of our voting populace, right? He surrendered those rights. He basically gave them up and said, okay, I'm gonna be here. But at any time, he can always, you know, go back. Where do we go back to? You know, if we decide, okay, well, this is not fair, where do we go back home when we're home? You know, it's a very fundamentally challenging issue in that way. And so when we look at the court rulings now, what we have to think about is, how do we move forward, right? Is it over? It's as Dr. Underwood would, I love how he said it's not over like a million times in the back end of that presentation I was starting to get. It's clearly not over. We have a very clear history of never knowing when to quit. I mean, we've been at it for almost 500 years. It's probably because we're the oldest civilization in this part of the Pacific. It's probably because we have this, you know, this inability to give up what is rightfully ours. And so, how do we move forward from this court ruling? Well, there's a few different things that we could do. One, the judge pretty much gave us the blueprint for how to write a law. How do you write it? You know, what is it about your law that I didn't like that made me rule against it? I think we know what that is. A lot of it deals with the transmission of the results of the plebiscite to Congress, the president, and the UN. The judge said that because we are submitting those results, that they're going somewhere, that it is a vote that impacts the general public. And therefore, you know, we should let, you know, everyone who is a registered voter have access to it. However, you know, we know that that fundamentally, this is really about recognition. This is about dignity. This is about respect. I mean, I know it's cliche, but when you've been disrespected for almost 500 years, you know, it's what else is left? We got to start somewhere. This is an acknowledgement that this is no accident, you know, that Chamorros are not the poorest, most incarcerated people, the people who suffer at the highest rates of non-communicable diseases. You know, we don't lead the charge in all of these great stats on accident. And that's where it has to begin for us. You know, we have to, you know, this is one of those steps that acknowledges it. Yes, it's important for status. Yes, it's important for decolonization, but it's also important for us, you know, for our identity, for our dignity, for our kids to feel like, you know, they're not just 2 pages in their history textbook, a footnote in the bigger picture of their education and how they see themselves within this world. You know, they're not just a dot on a map. And so I definitely don't think it's over. I definitely feel like there are still things that we can do here. We could write a new law. We could still move forward and still acknowledge and treat our people with dignity and respect. You know, personally, I wouldn't want to see us just say, well, let's just change everything. Let's just change all the things that made this law fail in the Ninth Circuit Court. And let's just do the switch, right? That was wrong, let's flip it around. I definitely don't think that that's the right idea. It needs to be a very thoughtful and deliberate process, a very strategic process. We have to look at it and ask ourselves, is it worth us just kind of taking a 180 on this? Because that's always historically, that's always the trap, right? Oh, we don't like that. You got to change this part. And then we're like, okay, well, what would you change it to? And then we have something that, you know, gets its neck deep in a hole for the next 50 years. I don't think that that's a smart strategy. Okay, anyway, that's it for this. We can go on to the questions or the next one.
Well, I just I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on, because this question has been asked to me several times, and isn't it true that granting us US citizenship already meant that we were decolonized? I mean,
no, not at all.
Who drew the line? And yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, you know, Maga Haga mentioned in her speech that, you know, the Organic Act was a huge milestone for our people. But we got to remember that the Organic Act was not something that we chose. We have yet to self-determine. You know, self-determination means that we're going to make a choice. Those who will be governed, those who wish to govern themselves, we want to make a decision about what our government is going to be, what it's going to look like, how it's going to work. We want to pick that, okay? We want to lead that. That has never been offered to us. And keep in mind that that was taken from us. We were here for thousands of years as a free civilization, a peaceful one. And that was taken from us by the Spanish when they decided that, you know, they were going to expand their empire. And then there was a war fought between that colonizer and the United States. And we were literally a spoil of war. Like that's why we are a US territory, is because the United States won that war. And that was part of the deal. And so, you know, we went through this whole period under the Americans where, you know, we were really kind of in this very politically ambiguous place. And yes, US citizenship was a drastic improvement from that political ambiguity, but it still was not self-determination. You know, we're still not equal. As a US citizen, you're not equal. Remember the first time I read the territorial clause, it just blew my mind. It like contradicted everything that I was taught in school. Everything I was taught in school was, you know, premised on this idea that, you know, with liberty and justice for all, one nation under God, indivisible. Like all of that just went out the window with the territorial clause. You know, the territorial clause basically says that Congress, it's, you know, it's up to them to decide what rights do and don't apply. I thought they're all guaranteed. What happened to that? I mean, I was, you know, so no, not at all. Not at all. Granting US citizenship is not decolonization. It is not self-determination. I mean, at best, it's an improvement.
I think
giving
that
us a non-voting representative.
It's akin to the idea of national voting rights. You know, part of the, or I guess the discussions that we're having in these webinars have us exploring our position with national voting rights. And right. I think that there's this idea out there that because of our citizenship, we ought to be able to participate. And so I wanted to ask you, you know, we covered this in the first segment. How do you think achieving national voting rights helps or hinders our quest for decolonization, for CHamoru self-determination, given our citizenship? What do you think about that?
National voting rights help or hinder? Well, I guess it depends. I guess it depends on, gosh, I hate to sound like all these questions make me sound like such a cynic when I respond. I can't help it, but I think it just depends. It depends on how our colonizer is going to use it against us. Straight up. That's pretty much how we move. You know, we have to kind of wait and see what's going to be done. Because let's just face it, US citizenship, it went down like that with that one too. You know, we were over here like political ambiguity, you know, we're in the political purgatory. We don't know what's going on, or, you know, what are we? We're owned by the United States, you know, but we're not. And then all of a sudden, boom, US citizenship. And we thought, oh man, great. Now at least we know, you know, where we stand and what's the deal. And that, you know, we're going to resolve like, you know, all this land grabbing. And that didn't happen, you know, it didn't happen. That was just another way, like, okay, well, now that you're US citizens, you know, in eminent domain, boom, here you go. We do that too. You know, we'll find a way. And I think that that's the thing with national voting rights, you know, is that yes, it can definitely change a lot of things, but at the same time, yes, it could also hinder. You know, there could be, let's just take, for example, the CONCON, right? We've been asking for a UN visiting mission since the last one. The first one was in the 70s, right? 70s. CONCON was the only time that a visiting mission was approved by the United States. Let's keep in mind that the UN's not just going to show up just because Guam asked them. They still consider, they still respect the protocol. They're still going to ask our colonizer if they can come. Hey, can we send a visiting mission? Is that okay with you? And it's never been approved, except during the CONCON. And if you really read and study that history and analyze what happened, that's what it was. As the United States thought, this is a great opportunity to show the UN, hey, look at this great thing that we're doing here. This is how we're gonna, remove Guam from the list of non-self-governing territories. We're gonna show them, look, we had them write a constitution. We're working with them. We're making this happen. We're supportive of their self-determination. By the way, it's important to note that the rhetoric is very different at the United Nations versus the United States. The United States doesn't say decolonization. They don't ever say it. Why? Because to decolonize means that there must be a colony. It's very difficult for the federal government to reconcile with that reality that we are a colony. You can call us a territory, an unincorporated territory. You can call us non-self-governing, whatever you want. You can call it what it is. It is a colony. We are a colony. We are colonized. They are a colonizer. It's uncomfortable, but we need to accept it. And so it depends. It could help. It could hurt. It could. We would, no matter what, we would strategize and move. We already have a strategy in place now without national voting rights. If we got national voting rights and then, the federal government turned around and was like, hey, look, they ran that same play with, the CONCON. Look at this, we gave them national voting rights. That's like, equality, or at least it's close. So maybe we can get them off that list. I think that we would turn around and leverage those national voting rights to find a way to, to heighten our negotiations. But see, that I guess that's the thing, is that it, on an international level, they're not all that concerned with what we are doing domestic, in a domestic sense. What they're more concerned about is what's really happening at the core of the fundamental issue, and that's what I appreciate. That's what I think is one of the major benefits of taking our fight to the UN, is that the language is not so suffocating, It's really difficult to deal with the federal government when the parameters are so narrow. The federal government is pretty, and they're pretty clear, like, look, they like to say we support self-determination. We support self-determination for Guam. What they won't say is we support CHamoru self-determination. What they won't say is we support decolonization. But they will say we support self-determination for Guam if every registered Guam voter can vote, and if the status quo is an option on the ballot. Yeah. If we did those, I bet you money. We did those two things. Like, we made a law and we did those two things. I bet you money that the feds would send money over. They'll support us. They'd be like, oh yeah, let's do this. Visiting mission, come on over. Witness this benevolent act of self-determination. We're working with these natives to make this happen. I guarantee you that would go down like that. But see, it questions the integrity of what it is that we're truly trying to do. Should we do, and that's what the point I was trying to make earlier, should we just, arbitrarily go and say, okay, you guys don't like this piece, let's just flip it around and let's do a 180 real quick and let's see how that works out. If we were to take those parameters, such strict parameters, we are absolutely corrupting the integrity of what it is that we are intending to do. In my opinion, that's insulting. You know, I really feel like that's an insult to our ancestors. So all the things that we have been through, all the trauma that we've experienced, that we continue to experience, it's just pouring salt in the wound.
Kind of dismissing the whole issue and never restoring that justice for us. So, right. But we can go ahead and move on into the next segment because I think this is where you want to cover the United Nations. I do have a question that came in from one of the participants, but go ahead and continue with your presentation, and then I'll send you the question when you conclude.
Okay. So since the Davis, or even before the Davis case, as I mentioned, we had been, deliberately engaging the UN. But since the Davis case, one of the important elements that I'd like to touch on is the UNPO. So in order to get there, I've already kind of talked about why we are engaging with the United Nations, but I would like to talk a little bit about how. How do we do that? The UN is a bureaucracy like any other. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're never going to get anywhere at the UN just by making a big splash or something. I remember being very disillusioned, thinking that we're going to go out to the UN and I'm just going to say something really moving and something is going to happen. I'm going to get somebody's attention. They're going to feel really emotionally connected to us. But it's not how it works. The UN is very much like any other governing body or legislative body. They're people like any other. There's a system like anything else. You have to engage them consistently, and you have to continue to network and expand and build relationships with other countries. That's what it's all about. You speak to any of our regional neighbors, that's the common thread among Palau, RMI, FSM, CNMI, even all the smaller, even the Polynesian islands and the Melanesian islands that are now UN members. All of them say the same thing. It's all about building those relationships and networking with the member states. And that's how you get your support. That's how you make things move. Now, we gotta go to New York to make this happen. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not a cheap thing to do. And so we typically engage 3 times a year. We go to the regional seminar, the C24, the annual gathering of the C24 and the C4, the committee of the 24, the 4th committee. So the 4th committee oversees the 24, and then the regional seminar is it's almost like a fact-finding mission. So we start with the regional seminar because every year they write a resolution and there's a report given by the United States to the UN. Usually the State Department prepares a report. So they prepare this report, they send it out there. The regional seminar is where they invite us. So they ask us to come. They actually pay for us to go and engage. They usually send invitations to the head of state and to a scholar. And this is our one and only chance to say something different other than what the State Department is saying about us or DOI is saying about us. So it comes through the State Department, right? It's their official international arm, but they often rely on, because we're under the Interior, it's usually the Interior that will prepare our report. Now, we all know that there's problems when people speak about you or speak for you. And so the regional seminar is a great opportunity for us to get out there and say, this is what we think. That engagement heavily informs what goes into the resolution, the draft resolution that is then voted on and heard on the 24, C24. So when they gather, they basically have gotten, when they receive the draft resolution, it should include everything that was raised at the regional seminar. And then we go into the C4, right? They vote on that resolution. And then between, so the C24 is really that's our only chance to kind of see what did and didn't make it in, and for us to fight for it. So if there's something that we don't like, that we think is damaging or compromises us in some way, that's our only shot to say, hey, we object to this. And it's you can't just go up there on the floor and say, we don't like it, please don't do it. You got to go out there and you got to connect with these as many member states as you can. And just think about this, kid. You're going out there, you're in New York for 3 days, right? That's what we can afford. 3 days, guys. We got 3 days to hit the whole floor. And not all of them, are English speaking countries. So, figure it out. I mean, it's not an easy task. But the more that we do this, and the more familiar our faces are when we get there, the more likely it is that we can be successful, which is exactly how Palau and RMI and all our neighbors did it. Some of our friends in Micronesia have told us, we used to stand outside the cafeteria in the hallway and we just wait. We just stand there and wait. And we're like, oh, right there, that guy. And then go after them, hey, from RMI, can I talk to you about this? And like that's how we made friends. That's how we did it. We just went out there, we made friends. And I think it's great, because that's quite frankly, that's what we're good at, right? Pacific Islanders are very good at making friends. But it's very difficult for us to do that, to engage in that way, when that's where the engagement happens. And then this year, during COVID, there wasn't even a regional seminar, C24, C4. But they passed resolutions without us. This is very challenging, very problematic. So that leads us to the UNPO. The UNPO is the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization. The UNPO basically is an advocacy organization. That's what they do, is that they have members who are from countries that do not have representation at the UN level. It's created by the Dalai Lama, was instrumental in some of the international liberation work with Tibet. Palau actually used the UNPO quite successfully. And so we saw an opportunity with the UNPO. Washington, D.C. is also a member of the UNPO because, D.C. is technically a territory. This is also a very interesting point that I won't get too deep into, but, we have a very fundamentally different issue than with D.C., even though we kind of connect in a lot of ways, right? We're both under the American system, both kind of feeling this inequitable relationship. And then we, are both seeking help and advocacy from the UNPO, but it's a very different thing for us than it is with DC. We are an indigenous people. This is the homeland. We have been here for centuries. We have a very different approach because we are not just talking about the colonization of our people, but also of our homeland. And so in this way, when it comes to national voting rights, this is an issue this is an element that realistically could solve the DC issue. National voting rights for DC would change everything for DC. Now, I know it's not that simple. There's a lot that needs to happen, but the impact that national voting rights would have on a territory like DC is very different than the impact that national voting rights would have on an unincorporated territory like Guam. And it's because we require self-determination, whereas DC, in a lot of ways, is already they should be on a path to statehood. That's the natural step forward for them. See, the unincorporated territory status was specifically built so that there is no path to statehood. We are not an incorporated territory for a reason. We are an unincorporated territory so that it is built to be a dead end. Okay, so anyhow, I wanted to just address, there were some questions. There was a question from Robert Cruz. I just realized that there's a question and answer button here.
Yeah,
so I can read
that's
it.
the
I'm
one.
so sorry. Okay, so I was just looking at this and I just wanted to address this because this is kind of, I'm sorry, can you go back real quick to the previous slide? So before, because I want to cover Proteji, Latex and also. But I wanted to say, because this question here from Robert Cruz is asking about what might be done to get the attention of the nations of the world in the limbo that we remain in. There's a much more preface to this question, but I wanted to just bring this up because, you know, the UNPO, the UN, and what we're doing with this work is important now in respect to something like, say, the Davis case, because it, you know, we're done here, right? With the litigation, it's done. You know, we appealed, we tried to appeal to the Supreme Court. That appeal was rejected and denied. Therefore, we have exhausted all domestic remedies. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing left to do in the US in terms of the court, right? Now, that now creates opportunity for us. We recently, Anti-Hope Alvarez Cristobal recently filed a case with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. This is significant. It's not a Gov Guam case, it's not a COD case, but there are clear implications that a case like this could have. Now, this is not like a traditional court. You know, they're not gonna rule in our favor and then, you know, go knocking on Uncle Sam's door saying, hey, you better do the right thing or we're gonna take you to jail or something. You know, it doesn't work like that. But what it does do is that it further amplifies our voice on an international level. It elevates the level of our issue, of our conversation, our issue. And this is significant because, let's face it, the people of the world are not paying attention to Guam. There are a lot of things that happen on Guam that if more people around the world knew about, if it was common knowledge of the level of oppression and colonization that we experience on a day-to-day, that we have been experienced historically, that people would be outraged. But the reality is that a lot of people don't know this. Shoot, I would venture to say a lot of our own people don't know this. But by continuing this type of international advocacy, by being deliberate in our approach, and I have to say this because it's a good segue into the Texan thing, is that the more that we are able to leverage independent movements of this nature, and when I say independent movements, I mean like community groups or individuals from our community that are doing this alongside us in the government. You know, the government has been pushing, but we clearly cannot do this alone. And there clearly is value to the efforts of our activists, of our community organizers, of our NGOs, of Humanities Guåhan, CAHA, all of that. You know what I mean? The traditional navigators, the weavers, the dancers, all of us together. That's what makes us strong. That's what that's what the international community needs to see. When they see one of us, they need to see all of us. And so this, moving into the last part of this, is the Protegi Latek Zen Save Ritidian movement is an excellent example of this. Here we have a group of, you know, community individuals, concerned citizens, I love that term, concerned citizens, and they banded together on an issue. But what's unique about this effort is that they have done a lot of these very strategic things that a lot of other groups have done. Groups like some of like the rock star groups like CHamoru Nation have done, you know, is strategically organized around an issue to raise local awareness, right? But what I really love about this, and the reason why it's here on this slide, is because what they then did is apply that concept, okay? Apply that concept in collaboration with the UNPO. They worked with the UNPO in an effort to bring the issue to the international stage, directly to the doorstep of the UN. And they did that by filing with these special rapporteurs, several different special rapporteurs at the UN. The special rapporteur, there are these different committees, different committees have different charges. And so they each have their own special rapporteur who's kind of like, you know, it's like the parapro. Hey, you guys are not doing your human rights. So you guys, hey, I got a complaint from Protegi Latek Zen. You guys say you're trying to build a firing range. So you're helping them on their self-determination. And so whenever they get the complaint, they have to vet it, you know, and determine whether or not there indeed is a violation and whether or not there is action required moving forward. I swear these guys filed with like 7 or 10 different special rapporteurs. They're on a roll right now. They are on a roll. And I just want to say that these efforts, like the efforts of, you know, Sign of Hope, the efforts of Protegi Latek Zen to bring the issue to the international level, it gives us opportunity. It increases our reach now. Now I'm hoping that it'll be easier the next run around when we start to go out and say, hey, we need your support on this resolution. I want somebody to say, oh yeah, the firing range, right? I really like that submission. We supported you on that one. We need that network to grow. And this is a really great example of how we grow that network in a very constructive way, right? Because we're still pushing on this issue. And what's great about this is that it's not just about Latek Zen and the firing range. This is also about access to sacred lands, the protection of those lands. It's also about clean water, environmental justice. You know, there are so many ways that we are able to expand even what seems to be an isolated singular issue like Latek Zen, right? We tend to think of Latek Zen as like this one area. But let's not forget that we're talking Latek Zen because we fought them out of Paget. You know? And that Paget was not ever just Paget. Paget is a symbol. Paget is a symbol because before Paget, there were others. Let's not forget Sumai. Sumai is what happens when we lose. You know, Sumai was like the next Hagatnya before they took it. Anyways, I'm going off right now. I think we should go to questions before I just start yelling.
I think we can go ahead and jump on into the next section. So, because Sorry. I know that people are curious about this next part of your discussion because of the Davis case, since you opened up with that. So
I'm sorry. Okay, real quick, I just wanted to say that there was the question about the effectiveness of the engagement with the UN. I think it's been very effective as of late, especially because we've just been building on it. We've continued to build on it. That's what it is, really. We continue to grow those efforts of all the people that have been there before us, all the people. I mean, a lot of us have gone since OPAR kicked open the door. We've just been showing up every year, and that's what's great about it. There's a lot of. I bet you there's people on this participant list or watching this webinar that have gone. I've only been to the UN because of Dr. Lisa Natividad gave me a chance. Said, hey, you don't know how to talk and write. Why don't you go? And that's what it takes for us. We got to continue to do that. Okay, anyway, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, what is next? I wanted to talk briefly about some of our current efforts. The self-governance study is easily one of the things that I'm really most excited about. There hasn't really been anything like this before. I would say the closest thing we've gotten to this was Joe Bradley's econ study that was done back in 2012, I think. I can't even remember. It's old. But even that, Mr. Bradley would tell you that it was supposed to be more. It was supposed to continue. But the effort, as great as it was, it was not entirely what he had wanted to do. That's not to say that this study is completely comprehensive. The study is not going to be the be all end all, but this is not just, in my opinion, you take a step in the right direction. This is a leap. This is really, this is a big one for us. The self-governance study really is meant to be an analysis of our the level, two things, our current level of self-government, and the second section is like I don't want to say it predicts, but it's meant to be an analysis of the impact, the potential impact of the three political status options on our current government, on our local government. So the self-government analysis is it's weighed against internationally recognized standards and what would signal a full measure of self-government. And so it gauges the different parts, different pieces of our government and how we work now under this status and how far are we from a full measure of self-government. In some ways, we are more sovereign than others, right? It's not just a blanket statement. In some ways, we do have a lot of control over certain things, but there are other things that we just have little to none. This part of the study is meant to kind of analyze all of that and rate it. The second part will similarly take different elements of our government and analyze them based on our current status, and then applying the models of the three other status options. So for example, it'll cover, say, immigration. What is our current immigration policy? How do we deal with immigration as a unincorporated territory? What would our immigration look like if we were to become a state? If we were to become freely associated, or if we were to become independent, how would it change? And then the scholars determined this analysis, or fed the analysis, by looking at other jurisdictions that have a similar status. So as a state, how does Hawaii handle their immigration? If we were a state, these are some of the possibilities. Now we know that even, no state is identical. So it's not a prediction. It's more just a forecast model, so to speak. What does a freely associated state look like? And, what is an example of one that has an immigration policy that we might adopt or apply? And then the same with independence. You know, what is an independent country model that we would, you know, that we could use to fit our needs? This is an academic exercise. It's going to be heavy and thick. We recognize that it's not going to be necessarily accessible to everyone. And we have been very deliberate about how we kind of manage that. What we've done is we've developed, in conjunction with it, a social media campaign. It's kind of meant to be like the highlight reel of the study. And so what we did is we went through it and we kind of try to extract some of the real hot button issues and some of the really powerful facts or perspectives that we think are the, you know, connected to the burning questions of our community, the pulse of our community. And so what we're attempting to do is to utilize that so that even if you don't read the study, you should still be able to access the really important information. But all of it is built to direct traffic back into the study. So for example, if we run the, let's say the immigration section, right, we can put out just a real short snippet on social media. This is what your status is now when it comes to immigration slide. This is what it could be if it was freely associated, because this is what, you know, Palau does, or this is what CNMI does. Flip, you know, to this is an independent model. This is what Singapore does, statehood, Hawaii, yeah, and then direct traffic back to the study. And then we just kind of build, you know, like a schedule so that we can put all of this information out there. It's real quick and digestible. You don't need to be, you don't have to have a master's degree to figure it out. But we hope that it, you know, we will make the study available online and physically. And so we're hoping that this is going to be kind of the thing that sparks the interest and gets people to want to dig into it. But the study is meant to be the centerpiece of the educational campaign, because it's meant to, you know, really answer a lot of these questions that have long been unanswered. We have some documentary projects, same, you know, TV delivery, video delivery. We rebuilt a PDN insert that is actually going to be in the Humanities Guåhan release, the magazine release. We're actually really excited about the collaboration. We're trying to release this in mass media as well. The Decol curriculum we're working on now. We finished one slate, like an introductory level curriculum for high schools. This is an effort that has in the past been stalled, but we're happy to, you know, to report that we've developed the curriculum. I think that in the past the challenge has been that, you know, we wanted curriculum, but we needed somebody to develop it, somebody to build it. And so, you know, props to Maga Haga for having the foresight to hire a teacher who knows how to do this kind of stuff. And so, you know, our team banged it out and we're ready to go. We're excited about it, to get it back into the schools. I'm really praying, you know, we can get this coronavirus figured out so that we can start engaging our kids again. But with or without the face-to-face, you know, we're ready to roll virtually. It's one of the things I really want to give credit to my team for, is adjusting to our new normal, so to speak. And then Fanhita is, we are planning to launch a second offering of Fanhita, which was our self-determination conference that we held in, so long ago, 2018, was it 2018? I don't know. No, 2018.
That was last year?
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah, 2019, yeah. You know, it feels, the coronavirus year just sent my mind into a time warp. Everything is fuzzy in that area, anywhere close to it. Okay, that's it for this slide. I did want to answer this question. Vincent Saul has been waiting. Where do you feel the passionate, peaceful protests in our history had provided the momentum for decolonization? And do you feel that we have assimilated so much to westernized culture in recent decades that we have lost that fuel to rekindle the fire of the movement? And what will it take? What kind of leaders do we need now who can lead us again, and how? Wow, that's a complex one. I would say that the protest is always going to be a reality. I think that protest is just a manifestation of our people's desire to be heard. When we feel like we are not being heard, we what other outlet do we have? So I think that so long as our voices continue to be stifled, you will continue to see people marching in the street. The way I look at it is, I've been on both sides of the fence. I've been on the side that's watching the protests. I've been out there in the hot sun and the rain holding my sign. And I always think to myself when I'm out there, like, you guys that, to the people that are like yelling at us and flicking us off on the road, I always remind myself, like, I don't want to be here either, man. I don't want to be out here holding the sign either. It's hot out here. It's raining. I don't want to have my kid out here, but I'm here because I have to be. We are here. We are families just like you, but something is happening to us. We don't feel like we're being acknowledged. So until things change, you'll keep seeing us. But I do think that those things are important. I do think that we have to rally around that. I think that no matter leaders that are committed to pushing the issue are fantastic. We need good leadership. I'm proud to be working for a commission on decolonization under a governor that wants to make it happen. Let's just face it, the law was built so that the governor would be the chair. And it was built like that so that there would always be action. It wouldn't just be, oh, the commission is buried somewhere. Because when the chair is the governor, that's the value of the people in the protest. Because if the commission is not moving, I expect all of you to be out there on Adelut front lawn asking our chair, the governor, what's the deal? And to be quite frank, in the years that the commission was dormant, that's what we should have been doing. That's why the law was built like that. That's why the governor was the chair, so that when there was no action, we should have been out on the lawn asking what's the deal. And so, I'm happy and I'm proud that our MAGA Haga is very supportive and very active in the sense that, she wants to see it happen. And I say, if your chair, the people's chair, wants to make a move, then we need to get on board and move. And I think that that's the thing that I'm really looking forward to, is that we inherited a situation that we just didn't have a whole lot to work with. I thought, let's get out there, right? My first day on the job, I was like, yeah, so where are we going first? Who am I going to talk to first? What do we got? Give me something, pamphlets or something, so I can go and do what I do. And I was like, what do you mean there's no pamphlets? There's nothing, like no handouts or educational materials that I can just, use. And so that's where we've been. And that's what we've been doing, is that, we've literally just ripped the whole thing down, gone back into our history. We resurrected the whole archive, and we've just been sourcing information, connecting with scholars, with writers, with our task forces, finding ways to develop content, to build it. And the study really was the first big thing. And I'm happy to say that, the previous commission, they've secured this money. They try to move this as far along as they could, and it didn't get done, but we're happy to say that it will be done. It's already in copy editing right now. So we're stoked. It needs a spell check. It needs a spell check, and then we'll be able to press it and get it out. But we'll definitely be releasing, and I would say March, maybe the end of March, April, somewhere around there. If all goes well.
Right on.
2:31. I'm 1 minute behind.
Yeah.
Oh, the last thing, incremental change. I I really like this idea. Incremental change does not address the core issue. Dr. Underwood had said this, and I think that this is really the message that I think is important in regards to national voting rights. National voting rights is fantastic. And it's not to say that it won't be a good thing for us. I want to be clear. I'm not against national voting rights. Would I turn them down if offered? Definitely not. You know, if national voting rights came to Guam, I think great. It's just another tool in the toolbox. But even if we were to be given full national voting rights, the same as any other state, I would still advocate for Chamorro self-determination. I would still advocate for decolonization because that is necessary. We have to do that. We have to first answer the question, what do our people want? Even if we were given national voting rights, we would still not be a state. And so we would have to determine, do we want to be a state or do we want something else? Now, if we decide that we want to be a state, then absolutely, national voting rights is a given. That should happen immediately. But we haven't yet crossed that bridge. And I think that, this is the same with the Constitution. I'm not saying that I'm against writing a Constitution. We absolutely have to write a Constitution. But what kind of Constitution are we going to be writing? If we do it now, we have to write a Constitution that falls within the parameters of the US Constitution under the umbrella, right? And it has to basically be a subservient Constitution, a Constitution that recognizes the sovereignty of the US. If we were to become freely associated, our governing document, our Constitution, will not be the same as a state constitution or a territorial constitution. If we were to become independent, it would be a totally different constitution. And so that's what I'm saying. It's not that we shouldn't have voting rights or we shouldn't have a constitution, but we need to figure this part out first. Both of those things would absolutely make a difference in the quality of our life, in our level of autonomy. But we have to first address the core of our issue. Okay, for reals, that's it. Thank
you. Thank you. Do you want to just promote the COD?
Oh yeah. We are with it, and we are on the Facebook and the Instagram and the Twitter. So follow us on social media. Our YouTube channel has all of the Fanjita videos. They're really nice and cut down into 1 hour segments. And they also include some extra footage. We interviewed some other folks and some of the scholar experts on the side during the day. So there is some new content that you may not have seen even if you attended. So definitely check it out. Feel free to email us at guamcod@guam.gov. And please check out our website, www.decol.guam.gov.
Thank you so much. That was what a conversation, dude. Thank you so much for your time. And now I mean, there were a couple of other questions that I wanted to ask you, but you did so well. Thank you very much for sharing everything with us. And I appreciate your time. But you're going to be happy because I am now about to introduce Nicole Quintanita.
Hey, one of my favorite poets.
Yeah, so
yay.
I think I've been looking forward to this part too. She actually, before I go in, she was a delegate of ours with the Literary Arts Committee for the Festival of Pacific Arts that I got to participate in and volunteer for. So Nicole Palau and Tronku Quintanita is a young Chamorro poet, weaver, and indigenous rights activist from Guahan. She believes that education is vital to the self-determination and decolonization of her people. She teaches Guam history at Okudu High School. She received her BA in Chamorro Studies and History and her MA in teaching from the University of Guam. And she aspires to open a youth center for the performing and cultural arts on Guahan. Nicole Hagupagu.
Day. I'll just jump into it. As a teacher, I often look out into an ocean of faces on mornings when the tide is low. I can see hands rise like coral clusters jutting out of the water, hesitant and scarce, as if afraid to be scorched by the sun's rays, as if the sun had not already raised the temperature of their ecosystem. How are they to thrive in these conditions? When students are conditioned to calcify themselves into a 2x3 desk, notions of what nation they belong to coat their minds like a thick layer of sediment, suffocating the knowledge that they belong to no one. In my classroom, I want thoughts to swim through their minds like fish about what they wish their island could become. Open their eyes means to decolonize. Imagine a future unpolluted by foreign power, where there's plastic bags and soda cans of colonization can no longer cause contamination in their waters. I want ideas to ebb and flow like waves from brain to paper, to plans to progress. There is no progress without them. There is no Guahan without them. Their voices will be heard for generations. They are the makers of nations, the caretakers of our islands, past and present and future. These students hold all the power. They are the island's protectors. Together, they will build a community, defend our people against tsunamis that threaten our democracy, grow into a reef of leaders and dreamers, determine a future they see for themselves that tells the world that Guahan is not going anywhere. They will surround the island vibrant and vast and unyielding, and it is our job to ensure our corals are thriving.
Amazing, Nicole. Just absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for doing this and for giving us the opportunity to hear your wonderful poetry. Thank you so much. So this brings us to the end of this important webinar. And what a way to go. What a wonderful ending. And we thank you again for being with us to hear this powerful and educational presentation. Sizus Masi to the governor, our Megahaga, to Melvin, Selena, and Nicole. We are filled with much gratitude for today's webinar. So before you sign off as the audience, we ask that you complete the evaluation, which is in the Zoom chat box and via a Facebook link. Thank you all for joining us.